Mr. Speaker, I take great pleasure in rising on behalf of the great people of Marco City to lend my support to the bill for an act to establish the Bahamas National Geographic Information System Center. I'll be brief in my comments on this. There are certainly some civil liberties concerns that will arise at some point, but that always arises with every advancement in technology. And I'm satisfied that at the appropriate time we will debate those and ensure that we have proper systems and regulations in place to not only lend to an efficient operation of this system, but also to protect the individuals in terms of the information that will be accessed. But you know, Mr. Speaker, while we're talking about this system, what concerns me more than this bill is the fact that we ended 2013 with 120 murders. That concerns me. We started 2014 with 4 murders and 7 attempted murders. And I don't sense the outrage that I think we should have in this House. You know, I'm not here to play politics with this. I am sick of playing politics. I'm absolutely sick of playing politics. I saw the people at this front bench sit in this House for 5 years and watch the crime numbers mount and did nothing about it. And right now we are sitting in a crisis, an absolute crisis. And what must happen, Mr. Speaker? Must the crisis come to our doorsteps before we take this crisis seriously? Must it? Must it really? We're in an absolute crisis. You know, I'm reminded, Mr. Speaker, many people talk about this man, Machiavelli. He was an Italian philosopher and historian and many other things. And we talk about him in the sense of this book we remember him by called The Prince, where he talked about the way in which you run a country and the decisions you sometimes have to make. But he's less well remembered for another book called The Discourses on the Republic, where he spoke about execution. And the simple point he makes, Mr. Speaker, it's a very simple point. It's a very, very simple point. He says, a prince must not mind incurring the charge of cruelty for the purpose of keeping his subjects united and confident. Incurring the charge of cruelty for the purpose of keeping his subjects, his citizens, united and confident. For with a very few examples, he will be more merciful than those who, from want of tenderness, allow disorders to arise. Because that's where murders spring from. What he's basically saying is when the state enforces its ultimate punishment, the state will be far more merciful than the punishment society will enforce by the state allowing society to fall into a state of chaos. It's a very simple proposition. This proposition was advanced before 1527 when he died. This is not a new proposition. At the end of the day, it is very simple. The only entity in the state which can execute, and I'm not talking about capital punishment. I am tired of being polite about this statement. The only entity in the country that can execute both to end a rivalry and an exclamation mark regarding its view of the crime, of the offense, is the state itself. What we have going on in this country right now is rampant tit for tat. I shoot you, you shoot me back. I am going to court, you're the witness, I'm going to knock you off. We know what's happening. And why are we not outraged by it? We are not outraged by it. When we get to the point that we have outrage in this House, the country will feel that outrage. The country, no, I'm not talking as an individual, I'm talking as this House. I am talking as this House. At the end of the day, we will make or break this country by what we do in here. I have sat in this House for 20 months, Mr. Speaker, ending yesterday. And I am tired of playing politics in this House. There are serious issues that need to be resolved and will have to be resolved in this House. And I'm just saying, if someone shoots one of my brothers or sisters, and I am not without sympathy, I will feel that, and I don't want to wait until one of them is shot for me to get up in this House and express outrage. At the end of the day, this polite approach we're taking to law enforcement where we are blaming the police or blaming the courts and failing to blame ourselves for passing the proper laws and putting in place the prescriptions that need to be put in place to avoid all of these delays, to avoid all of these excuses, and to deal definitively with crime, stops here. It stops absolutely here. I do not understand it. I do not understand the suggestion that we cannot execute in the way that we want because we have definitions that are being imposed upon us by another court. I don't understand that. We legislate. We define the definitions. If we do not like the way in which our laws are being interpreted, we redefine those definitions. And the courts comport themselves to the definitions we define. Not us to them to us. Exactly. At the end of the day, what is allowed is being allowed because we're allowing it. I don't know how else to say that. And do we need to have another year of 100 and something murders before we say this? Do we need to be earmarked and identified and black labeled or whatever you want to call it by the U.S. government again before we be serious about this? Do I need to wait in Freeport to watch crime migrate from Nassau to Grand Bahama and start seeing people act over there the way they're acting over here before I stand up as a member for Marco City and say I have a problem with this? I don't think that's what we're here to do. And I will say it again, I'm sick and tired of the politics in this House. Mr. Speaker, I am waiting anxiously. I spent the beginning of last year, and I will get back to this at some point, the beginning of last year watching the tail end of my name being vilified in this House. I did what I had to do for my country, and I bore the price for that. And I haven't forgotten that. I will get back to that very shortly, at the right time. I've watched this leader of the opposition call me names in this House and call for me to be investigated. And when the report was labeled, he never said anything to withdraw it. Talking about another member of this House, I've watched my members on that side either contribute to that or not do anything to defend that. And when the report was put in place, never did anything to correct it on the record of this House. I have paid a price to be in this House, and I pay it happily because I'm here to do the people's business. And what I'm saying, Mr. Speaker, and I'm saying this at the beginning of the year so people could be very clear, very, very, very clear on all I've said before I was elected and what I've said in this House since I've been elected. There are things that I came in here to pay a price for. I take my stripes very happily. I come in here to pay a price for certain things, and I'm waiting for these things to come to the table. What are we going to do about taxation in this House? What are we going to do from this House to fulfill the PLP promise from before we went to England, before independence, to bring equality of taxation to our people? What are we going to do to bring relief? This is only something the PLP can do. This is why I'm in this party. This is the party that believes in uplifting the poor, in supporting those who are downtrodden and making a way for those who have no way. Bring the VAT debate to this House, and let's talk about that. I've made it very clear I'm going to vote against it. I'm not going to absent myself from the House. I'm going to stand here and vote against it because it's a bad law in the way it's presently framed. Bring the gaming debate to the House, because there cannot be any way that we will justify discrimination against Bahamians in this day and age. Bring the debate these guys don't want, the debate on income tax, that the F&M doesn't want because it goes against their constituents. Bring it to this House, and let's now talk about equality and equity in the way we treat our people. And let's finally get to the point where we admit that what we are calling a national debt, which is the difference between what we earned and spent for 40 years of independence, is equivalent to the tax break we gave to the rich for 40 years of independence. Let's talk about it. And how do we go forward without equalizing that and making sure the people in this House, those of us who earn more than most of those out there, start paying our share so that they don't have to carry those heavy burdens? Let's talk about it. Let's bring to this House the things we need to bring to this House. I have made it very clear from the very beginning. I am passionate about Grand Bahama. And on this, I share some views with the honorable member for East Grand Bahama. There's no way to fix Grand Bahama, the Bahamas, without fixing Grand Bahama. I will never stop saying that. There's absolutely no way. If you want to do anything in Nassau, you need to build infrastructure here, you need to build roads here, you need to build schools here, you need to build hospitals. You can do the same thing in Grand Bahama. You don't have to build anything. Just bring the business, and we will take the people. It's a very simple proposition. There's no other country I know will squander an entire island, an entire population, entire economy, the way we're squandering Grand Bahama. Bring the debate. I'm tired of sitting here and talking about nonsense. Absolute nonsense. When serious issues remain to be discussed. Mr. Speaker, I've said it before. I ran on a campaign on this, and I'll say it again. Because I'm convinced. See, what I think a lot of people in this House do not understand, Mr. Speaker, election cycles are not 5 years, you know. They're 3 years. 3 years. The people will make up their mind, and we're 24 months into that. 24 months into that already. I have said it before, and I will say it again. I'm just laying out so that when I keep saying this all year, this is all I'm going to keep saying. I will say what I have to say here, and I'll go in Marco City and do what I have to do there for my people. And yes, to the member of East Grand Bahama, I will speak shortly. In fact, I'll speak through the public media on the Silver Sands Hotel at the right time. It's just not ripe yet, but we're about a month away from that. So just hold your horses for a minute. But I will say this. I said this before, and I will say this again. We have a few issues that are critical to this country. Taxation is one. The gaming debate is another. Corruption, and that's going to come in taxation when we have that debate. I'm going to put my 2 cents on the table. You vote how you want. But I will make sure the voice of Marco City is heard. On immigration, it's unfair to kick this can down the road for another cycle. Again, we are the only party that will solve this issue. We cannot have 60,000 undocumented people in our country and wonder why crime is the way it is, wonder why people are not cooperating with the police. We have an underclass that we have created that are ours. This is a PLP issue to solve. And we're here talking about other things. Just solve it. The people want leadership. They want us to just tell them what to believe, and they will follow us. Mr. Speaker, let me just say this, and I'm going to sit down because I'm obviously very passionate about this. I will not waste another year in this House. I've said this, and I will keep saying this. I'll say this as definitively as I can. We have a debate coming on in Grand Bahama about the extension of the Hawkesbury Creek Agreement for 2015, which is a tax break only for non-Bahamians. It has nothing whatsoever to do with Bahamian tax breaks. I say that as a lawyer of 20-something years standing, and I dare anyone to contradict me on that. And I do not see sense in giving a tax break to foreigners for an island that doesn't have money to develop its own infrastructure. I don't see any sense. And I will say it again. This discussion cannot be a discussion that's being had behind closed doors. There are 5 elected MPs for Grand Bahama. I'm obviously not doing political today, you know. I'm obviously not doing it. So let me calm myself down and say this. At the end of the day, my birth certificate doesn't say PLP or FNM or DNA, you know, it says Bahamian. My passport doesn't say PLP, DNA, or FNM, it says Bahamian. My heart says PLP. Because that's the party that raises people up as I understand it. Let's do the job we were called to do. Our job. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.